They say the strongest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the very people you tuck into bed at night. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, and it shattered not only my marriage, but the way I saw myself. You think you know the person who shares your pillow until you stumble on the truth that they've been sharing it elsewhere too. Before I begin, I want to ask you, if stories of betrayal, deceit, and cold revenge grip your heart the way they did mine, please subscribe to the channel. Each story here is a window into the hidden lives people don't talk about but desperately need to hear. My name is Claire. I'm 43 years old, a mother of 2, and a woman who thought she had her life figured out. I live in a quiet suburb in Pennsylvania, surrounded by white picket fences and neighbors who waved with rehearsed smiles. My husband, Daniel, was the kind of man people envied. Successful at work, charming at barbecues, and always quick with a joke. To everyone else, we were the perfect couple. But perfect pictures often hide cracked frames, don't they? I used to pride myself on trust. Trust was the bedrock of my marriage, or so I believed. Daniel traveled often for work. Corporate meetings in New York, conferences in Chicago. I didn't question the late-night calls or the weekend flights. Why would I? A devoted wife doesn't count the hours her husband is gone until the hours start to feel suspicious. It began with something small, his phone buzzing at midnight. He'd silence it quickly, claiming it was a client in another time zone. I told myself not to overthink, but you know that gnawing feeling in your gut, the one that whispers louder each time you ignore it? Mine had started screaming. Then came the forgotten receipts. A dinner bill from a restaurant I knew too well. Romantic, candlelit, the kind of place you don't take clients. I tucked it into my purse without a word. My heart told me to confront him, but my pride said, wait, watch, collect every piece before you strike. And so I watched. I played the dutiful wife while doubt grew like rot in the walls. One evening, he returned from a conference. He carried a gift bag, a scarf I would never wear. When I looked at the receipt, it wasn't from the airport. It was from a boutique in town. My hands shook as I folded the receipt back, forcing a smile. I kissed his cheek, pretending everything was fine, but inside, a storm was building. The final blow came not from him, but from someone else. My neighbor, Judith, stopped me one morning. Her words were soft, almost apologetic. Claire, I thought you should know. Daniel was seen with someone at the country club. Not for business, for pleasure. My chest tightened. Judith didn't know that I had already pieced the puzzle together. She just handed me the last piece. And there it was. Proof. Not in ink, not in receipts, but in confirmation from someone who had no reason to lie. My perfect picture cracked beyond repair. That night, as Daniel slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Betrayal has a way of burning you cold, leaving you awake when the world sleeps. I knew then that my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. He thought his deceit was hidden in shadows, but I was already planning how to turn those shadows into his downfall. Because trust, once broken, doesn't just disappear. It transforms into strength, into strategy, into revenge. And my revenge would be patient, deliberate, and unforgettable.
The truth doesn't always scream. It whispers, hiding in ordinary places. In my case, it was tucked behind the bright glow of a phone screen, waiting for me to look closer. After Judith's quiet revelation, I couldn't go back to living blind. Every laugh Daniel gave me, every kiss on the cheek felt staged. I needed more than receipts, more than whispers. I needed undeniable proof, the kind that would make him choke on his own lies when I laid it out before him. I started small. When Daniel left his phone on the nightstand, I waited. My hands hovered over it more nights than I'd like to admit, but my fear stopped me. What if I saw nothing? What if I was just paranoid? But then, what if I found everything? One evening, while he showered, the screen lit up. A name I didn't recognize. My breath caught. "See you soon," emoji heart. My pulse thundered as I scrolled quickly, taking screenshots with trembling fingers. Conversations of longing, plans carefully masked as work dinners. The words blurred, but the meaning was sharp enough to cut me open. I transferred the evidence to my own phone, quietly, methodically. Each screenshot a dagger, each emoji another twist of the blade. He thought his secrets lived in private threads. He never imagined I'd become the reader of his double life. Still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Confrontation is easy. It's emotional, impulsive. But revenge? Revenge needs patience. Revenge waits for the stage to be set, so the fall is public, undeniable, and humiliating. And then I saw her name, Melissa, a colleague from his office, married, children. The betrayal doubled, not just of me, but of her family too. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was cheating with someone who had her own husband to betray. I closed the phone, placed it back gently, and forced a calm smile when he stepped out of the bathroom. He didn't know I had seen the monster beneath the mask. He didn't know the game had shifted. My silence was my weapon, and soon it would be the very thing that destroyed him.
The cruelest thing about betrayal is not the act itself. It's the performance that follows. The hugs, the laughter, the charade of love while deception festers underneath. At family dinners, Daniel was his usual charming self. He made the kids laugh, told his father stories about office deals, and squeezed my hand under the table as though to reassure me. If only he knew that each touch made my skin crawl. Because I now knew the truth. He wasn't just my husband. He was my deceiver. The office suddenly became central in every story he told. New projects, late nights, team collaboration. And Melissa's name slipped in casually, always as the best asset to the company. I wanted to scream across the dinner table, but I kept my voice soft, my smile pleasant. Why expose him in private when I could ruin him in front of everyone? I began gathering details, company events, office gossip, whispers about their team bonding trips. A little digging through mutual friends confirmed it. Daniel and Melissa were inseparable at work. Colleagues had noticed, though they laughed it off. They're just close, someone told me. Close enough to destroy 2 marriages, I thought. I started noting dates, times, places. When Daniel claimed he was in Chicago, his card showed he was buying wine in Philadelphia. When he said late-night work calls, the timestamps on his messages to Melissa told a different story. My notebook filled with lines of deceit, a timeline of betrayal. Each page was power. Each entry was a step closer to his downfall. But power only works if it's wielded at the right moment, doesn't it? And I was just getting started. The cracks started showing when Daniel invited Melissa and her husband Tom to a company acquisition party. It's all business, he told me. But my lips curved into a knowing smile. I had just been handed the perfect arena to set my plan in motion. The mask Daniel wore was slipping, and soon I'd be the one pulling it off, right when he thought he was untouchable. The humiliation he had earned would not be private. It would be staged, and his audience would include everyone he had tried so hard to impress. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be hunted down. It walks right up to your doorstep, gift-wrapped in arrogance. For me, that invitation came in the form of a company party. Daniel came home one evening with a polished grin plastered across his face. "Big news," he said, kissing my cheek as though nothing in the world were broken. "The firm just finalized the acquisition, and they're hosting a celebration. Black tie. You'll love it." I wanted to laugh. Love it! I'd be walking into the very lion's den where his affair was no longer a whisper, but an open secret. Yet, I nodded sweetly, brushing his tie as if the thought thrilled me. Inside, my mind was racing. The party was the stage I had been waiting for, the perfect backdrop to expose him, not just to me, but to his colleagues, his bosses, and Melissa's husband. I immediately began preparing, though, not in the way Daniel imagined. While he ordered his tuxedo, I quietly contacted Tom, Melissa's husband. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but betrayal has a strange way of uniting strangers. He didn't sound shocked when I told him. Hurt? Yes. Angry? Absolutely. But surprised? Not at all. That confirmed what I already knew. Melissa wore the same mask Daniel did. Together, Tom and I began weaving a plan. The party wasn't just going to be a celebration of corporate success. It was going to be the stage where both cheaters finally faced their truth. The irony didn't escape me. Daniel thought he was inviting me into his victory lap. What he didn't realize was that he was signing his own social obituary. Tom revealed something I didn't expect. Melissa had been siphoning company resources to cover her little rendezvous. Hotel bills, quote, client dinners, even airline tickets charged under expenses. Proof that could sink not just her marriage, but her career. That night, as I zipped up my gown in front of the mirror, I didn't see a broken wife anymore. I saw a woman sharpening her blade, not for blood, but for justice. The party would be my battlefield, and Daniel, he'd never see the first blow coming.
They say confidence is the best outfit you can wear. That night, mine wasn't sewn from fabric. It was stitched together with vengeance. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and laughter, men in suits clinking glasses with women in silk gowns. I walked in on Daniel's arm, his hand warm against mine, while my heart beat cold with purpose. He thought I was his ornament, the smiling wife who knew nothing. But I wasn't dressed for the occasion. I was dressed for war. Melissa was there, of course. Red dress, calculated laugh, leaning too close to Daniel under the guise of business chatter. Her husband Tom arrived shortly after, greeting me with a nod so subtle no one else noticed. We were allies in plain sight, hidden beneath polished manners. I watched Daniel work the room, basking in attention from his bosses, charming colleagues, and oblivious friends. Every word he spoke was another brick in the empire he believed he had built. But empires collapse quickly when their foundation is rotten. At one point, Melissa caught my eye. She smiled politely, unaware that her entire world was about to implode. I almost pitied her. Almost. Because pity has no place in revenge. As speeches began, I slipped away for a moment, meeting Tom in a quiet corner. He handed me a folder thick with documents, expense reports, receipts, everything Melissa thought she had hidden. Together, our arsenal was complete. His betrayal of her, my betrayal of him, perfectly aligned. The plan was simple, devastatingly so. While the room celebrated Daniel and Melissa as rising stars, we would drop the truth like a chandelier shattering onto marble. Their affair, their lies, their misuse of company money, it would all unravel in one carefully timed moment. When I returned to Daniel's side, he slipped his arm around my waist, whispering, "You look incredible tonight." I smiled up at him, my eyes soft, but my mind sharp as a blade. He thought I was his loyal wife, but within an hour, he'd realize I was his executioner of reputation, pride, and power.
Some toasts raise glasses. Others raise the truth like a blade, cutting through the room until everyone bleeds shock. That night, I lifted my glass knowing the toast I'd deliver would leave Daniel and Melissa gasping for air. The speeches were winding down. Daniel's boss had just praised his dedication and late nights, completely oblivious to where those late nights had really been spent. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then the microphone was passed to Daniel.
He stood tall, pride radiating off him. His words dripped with charm. None of this would have been possible without the support of my amazing wife, Claire, and of course, my brilliant colleague, Melissa. The audience clapped politely, and I felt my jaw tighten. He had the audacity to parade me and his mistress in the same sentence. When the applause died, I reached for the microphone. "May I?" I asked with a smile that fooled them all. Daniel looked startled but handed it over. That's when the silence thickened, all eyes on me, waiting for the dutiful wife's words. "My husband is right," I began, my voice calm and smooth. "Dedication is everything. Late nights, hidden sacrifices, secrets no one sees. Tonight, I'd like to celebrate transparency, because without it, none of us can truly succeed." Whispers stirred. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Melissa's smile faltered. Perfect. I pulled a folded paper from my clutch and read aloud, "Hotel Del Mar, Suite 402, dinner for two at Les Jardins. Flights billed as client meetings." Murmurs erupted. Every expense Daniel and Melissa claimed as business was in fact their affair. Gasps filled the room. The chandeliers glittered cold light on their ashen faces. I placed the folder Tom had given me on the podium. "This is every receipt, every report. Lies documented in ink. Lies that betray not only marriages, but this company's trust." Melissa's husband stood then, his voice sharp. "I can confirm every word. My wife has been living a double life with this man." The room fell into chaos. Daniel reached for me, stammering, "Claire, please, let's talk about this." But I stepped back, steady as stone. This wasn't just exposure, it was execution. And I had delivered it flawlessly.
The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. And Daniel had spent years polishing his image, only to have it smashed in front of everyone who once admired him. The ballroom was no longer a place of celebration, it was a courtroom. People whispered, pointed, shook their heads. Colleagues avoided Daniel's eyes. Melissa's boss muttered into his phone, his face red with rage. Melissa tried to gather dignity, her voice trembling. This is a personal matter, not a professional one. But the executives weren't buying it. "Company money was used," one of them snapped. "That makes it everyone's business." Daniel looked pale, gripping my arm like a drowning man. "Claire, you didn't have to do this here." His voice cracked, pleading. For years, I had been the one begging for scraps of attention. Now, the tables had turned, and I let his hand slip away. Tom, steady as ever, stepped forward. "As her husband, and as an investor in this company, I'll be pursuing legal action, both for the betrayal in my marriage and the financial fraud hidden under company expenses." Melissa broke then, tears streaking her carefully painted face. Daniel tried to comfort her, but she recoiled, two snakes turning on each other once cornered. The bosses spoke quietly, then one announced, "Effective immediately, Daniel and Melissa are suspended pending investigation." Applause didn't follow, but the silence was louder than any cheer. I leaned in close to Daniel, my words icy. "You thought your secret made you powerful, but secrets rot, Daniel, and now everyone can smell the decay." He blinked, stunned, as though he still couldn't believe his empire had crumbled in less than 10 minutes. As I walked out of the ballroom, heads turned, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't the betrayed wife anymore. I was the woman who set fire to his carefully built house of lies and walked away without a single burn. Humiliation doesn't end when the lights dim. It follows you home. It follows you to work. It follows you into every conversation. For Daniel, the whispers had only just begun. The morning after the party, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends, relatives, even neighbors. Everyone had heard. In suburban communities like ours, scandal travels faster than any news broadcast. And this scandal, it had legs. Daniel stormed through the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear. "It's blown out of proportion," he barked at someone on the other end. His voice cracked when he realized the executives had already frozen his accounts and revoked his access to company files. The golden employee was suddenly radioactive. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching him unravel. The kids had heard enough to know something was wrong, but I shielded them from the details. "Daddy's in trouble at work," I told them gently. Daniel shot me a glare, but what could he say? He'd written this script himself. Family didn't stay silent either. His sister called me, her tone sharp. "Claire, why would you do this in public?" I laughed bitterly. Why? Because Daniel made his betrayal public long before I did. He just thought nobody noticed. The line went quiet after that. Even my in-laws, who had always seen Daniel as flawless, avoided defending him. His mother's voice was heavy with disappointment when she finally called. "I raised you better than this." For once, she wasn't talking to me. Daniel tried to spin the story, claiming I had overreacted, that the affair wasn't serious, but no one bought it. Proof doesn't lie, and my folder of receipts had already made its rounds among colleagues and relatives alike. He wasn't just a cheater anymore. He was a liar, a fraud, a cautionary tale. That morning, I realized something. I didn't need to raise my voice or chase revenge anymore. The truth was doing the work for me. His downfall had become self-sustaining. Carried by whispers, I had simply set free.
Betrayal doesn't just split two people, it ripples outward, forcing everyone around to choose a side. And in our family, the lines were drawn sharper than I ever imagined. The Sunday dinner that followed was unbearable. My parents, Daniel's parents, the kids, and a few cousins gathered as though nothing had happened. But silence sat heavier than the roast chicken on the table. Daniel tried to pretend. He served food, cracked hollow jokes, and even poured wine for his father. But nobody smiled. Finally, my father put his glass down. "Son," he said sternly, "do you understand what you've done?" Daniel stammered about mistakes and moving forward, but my mother cut in. "Moving forward? After what you've done to Claire? To this family?" Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with restrained fury. The kids shifted uncomfortably. Our eldest, Emily, finally whispered, "Dad, why would you hurt Mom?" The question sliced through the room sharper than any knife. Daniel's face crumbled, but I offered him no rescue. Let him drown in the weight of his own daughter's disappointment. Relatives chimed in, some blaming him outright, others quietly avoiding eye contact. It wasn't just me who'd been betrayed, it was everyone who believed in the image he sold them. When dessert was brought out, his father stood, his voice low but final. "Until you take accountability, you're not welcome in my house." The room froze. Daniel's jaw dropped. For the first time, his own family turned their backs on him. I sat quietly, not gloating, not crying, simply absorbing the justice unfolding around me. He had tried to paint me as vindictive, but now even his blood saw the truth. Betrayal isn't just a private sin, it's a public debt. And Daniel had finally been handed the bill.
Some men believe their charm will save them in every situation. But in a courtroom, charm doesn't weigh more than a receipt. And Daniel's pockets were heavy with them. Weeks after the party, lawyers got involved. Melissa's husband, Tom, kept his word. He filed lawsuits against both Melissa and Daniel for misuse of company funds. And my attorney quietly prepared divorce papers with every ounce of evidence I had collected. Daniel paced our living room like a caged animal. "We can fix this, Claire," he pleaded. His voice cracked, but the sincerity was as fake as the smiles he used to give Melissa. "If you don't go through with this, maybe I can talk the board into giving me another chance." I stared at him, calm. "You're not saving your career, Daniel, and you're not saving this marriage. Both are already gone." The courtroom was nothing like the parties he once thrived in. No chandeliers, no laughter, no soft applause for his speeches. Just stone walls, hard benches, and a judge's gaze cut sharper than any critic's. Our lawyer presented the receipts, the messages, the expense reports. Each one read aloud like another nail in his coffin. Melissa sat pale beside her attorney, her eyes avoiding mine. The same woman who once smirked across ballrooms now looked like a ghost of herself. Daniel's defense? It was a lapse in judgment. A lapse that spanned months, hundreds of charges, and countless lies. The judge's frown deepened with every excuse. When the gavel struck, the words hit harder than any fist. "Mr. Daniels, you will be financially liable for restitution to the company. Additionally, Mrs. Daniels' divorce petition is granted with favorable terms." He had lost his marriage, his job, and now his money. I walked out of the courthouse with papers in my hand and steel in my heart. Daniel stumbled behind me, a hollow man. Revenge wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise, and delivered in a tone even the judge couldn't ignore.
Wealth had always been Daniel's armor, his safety net, his shield. But strip a man of money and you see what he's really made of. Spoiler, Daniel was made of nothing. The restitution orders drained him quickly. His frozen accounts turned into seized assets, cars, stocks, even his retirement fund, gone piece by piece. His empire crumbled not with fire, but with paperwork. One night, he showed up at my doorstep, looking nothing like the man I once knew. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes sunken. "Claire," he whispered, "I don't have anywhere else to go." I let him stand in the cold. The kids peered from behind me, their faces blank. He had betrayed their mother, their family. Did he really think my door would still open for him? His own parents refused to take him in. His friends stopped answering calls. Even Melissa had vanished, her own husband securing custody of their children and their home. 2 snakes, left homeless, stripped of the power they once wielded. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the late-night messages, the lies, the receipts tucked carefully into my purse, and pity dissolved back into ice. "I'll rebuild," he swore. "I'll come back stronger." I met his eyes, steady. "Daniel, you can rebuild all you want, but not with me. Not with our children. You'll never stand in this home again." He flinched, as though the words struck harder than any slap. Because deep down, he knew they weren't a threat, they were a sentence. I closed the door on him that night, the echo sealing the chapter of my life where I played the fool. Now, I wasn't just his ex-wife. I was the woman who had taken everything he thought untouchable and left him with exactly what he deserved. Nothing.
Some men fear death, but for Daniel, the real death was social. The day nobody called his name anymore, except in whispers of shame. After the courtroom, I thought the humiliation would slow, but in truth, it spread faster. Social circles that once celebrated Daniel now treated him like a cautionary tale. Invitations stopped arriving. Golf buddies who once laughed over cigars crossed the street when they saw him. Even church gatherings turned cold. People whispered, "That's him, the one who lost everything in front of his wife." I watched it all from a distance. At the grocery store, I overheard 2 women mutter about the fall of the golden couple. I didn't correct them. Let the story live. Let the whispers travel. After all, I had only cracked the truth open. His own actions had built the legend of his downfall. Daniel tried to salvage his reputation, reaching out to colleagues and family with hollow apologies. But apologies mean little when the wound is still bleeding. His voice carried desperation, not redemption, and nobody trusted him anymore. Even the kids distanced themselves. Emily refused to attend father-daughter events. Our youngest, Jacob, turned his head away when Daniel tried to hug him. "Why would you hurt us?" he asked once, echoing a question that could never be answered. At a neighborhood gathering, Daniel approached, trying to rejoin the fold. Someone muttered, loud enough for him to hear, "Here comes the fraud." He froze, his face ashen. That was the final nail. He wasn't just a man who cheated. He was a man who lost his place in the world. I didn't gloat, not publicly. Revenge doesn't always need a stage. Sometimes the quiet exile of a betrayer is louder than any applause. Daniel wasn't just alone, he was erased.
Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums softly, steady as a heartbeat, reminding you that justice has been served without you lifting another finger. Life for me began to bloom again. My children laughed more freely, my parents embraced me with pride, and even neighbors who once pitied me now looked at me with quiet respect. I had not only survived betrayal, I had rewritten the ending. The clothing startup I had once run quietly in the background of our marriage began thriving. Support poured in from friends and clients who admired my resilience. "If you can endure what you went through, you can run anything," one investor told me, and they were right. Daniel, meanwhile, drifted like a shadow. He lingered in coffee shops, searching for anyone who might listen to his sob story. Sometimes I'd hear through whispers that he begged for odd jobs, anything to pay his rent. But nobody trusted him, not employers, not investors, not friends. Melissa had vanished entirely. Rumor had it she moved out of state, leaving her children with Tom. Two betrayers, stripped of their spoils, each living in their own exile. And me? I sat at my desk, signing papers for my expanding business, hearing my children's laughter from the next room. My life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. One evening, Emily asked me, "Mom, are we better now?" I hugged her tightly. "Yes," I whispered, "because the truth always sets us free, even when it hurts first." My revenge wasn't about destroying Daniel's body or even his spirit. It was about reclaiming myself, showing him and everyone else that betrayal doesn't end you, it reveals you. And in that revelation, I had found strength, clarity, and peace.
Some endings aren't written in silence. They're spoken aloud in front of every person who once believed the lie. Daniel thought the whispers had faded, but I had one final stage left for him. Months passed. My life had steadied, my business thrived, and the kids had begun to smile again. Then came an invitation, a family reunion at his parents' home. Daniel would be there. Everyone would be there. I debated attending. Part of me wanted to avoid the sight of him altogether, but another part, the stronger part, knew this was the perfect chance to close the story once and for all. The reunion buzzed with laughter, music, and stories. I arrived with Emily and Jacob holding my head high. Conversations hushed when Daniel entered the room. He looked older, worn down, a man decades beyond his age. The once proud husband now reduced to a ghost among relatives. He tried to mingle, offering forced smiles, but people shifted away. His father barely acknowledged him. His mother's eyes carried disappointment, not warmth. Even cousins who once adored him treated him like a stranger. When dinner was served, Daniel stood suddenly, glass in hand. "I know I've made mistakes," he said, his voice trembling. "But I want my family back. I want forgiveness." The silence that followed was deafening. I rose then, my voice clear and steady. "Forgiveness doesn't erase what you've done, Daniel. Betrayal doesn't just cut one person, it cuts everyone at this table. And forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned. And you haven't even begun to earn it." Heads nodded around me. His own family, his own blood sided with me. His plea dissolved into nothing, swallowed by the weight of his actions. That night, Daniel didn't just lose me, he lost his family, his community, his place at the table. Betrayal had finally stripped him bare in front of those who once believed he was flawless.
Revenge isn't always fire. It's ice. Cold, unyielding, and unforgettable. And in the quiet after everything, I realized the lesson wasn't just his. It was mine too. Life returned to a rhythm. My business blossomed, the children thrived, and laughter filled my home again. Daniel drifted farther from our orbit, a man erased from the world he once ruled. Occasionally, I'd hear his name in passing. Someone spotted him working odd shifts. Someone else mentioned he rented a dingy apartment on the edge of town. Each story painted the same picture. A man who once owned everything, now reduced to scraps. I never reached out, not once, because revenge isn't checking to see if the wound still bleeds. Revenge is walking away, knowing the wound will never heal the same. Friends asked if I felt satisfied. Does watching him fall make you happy? My answer was always calm. It doesn't make me happy, it makes me whole. On a quiet Sunday morning, I stood in my backyard watching the kids play. Emily turned to me and said, "Mom, you're stronger now, stronger than before." That was the payoff. Not Daniel's ruin, not Melissa's exile, but the strength I found in the ashes. This was never just about punishing Daniel. It was about reclaiming myself, teaching my children that betrayal cannot define us, it can only refine us. My revenge was cold, precise, and final. And Daniel? He became the lesson, the living reminder that betrayal, once exposed, doesn't just destroy marriages, it destroys legacies.